Hello guys, welcome to this video tutorial series on Python. Throughout this tutorial series, I'll explain to you how to get started with Python and the various related concepts. So Python is an easy to learn dynamically typed cross-platform programming language. Now I know that's a lot of words in one sentence, but I'll try to come back to each of these concepts individually. But let's go on. So if you are trying to get into software development world, be it web development, machine learning, backend development or frontend, or even automated trading like trading in stock market, then you can do a lot of things with Python. It has libraries full of inbuilt high-level data structures and provides a simple but effective approach to object-oriented programming. Being an interpreted language, it is ideal for rapid prototyping and scripting. Python's elegant syntax and dynamic typing, together with its interpreted nature, makes it an ideal language for scripting and rapid application development in many areas or on most platforms. Now, coming back to the concepts I talked about in the first line, the first concept that I would like to talk about is the concept of statically typed and dynamically typed language. So statically typed languages are languages like C++ and Java, where the type of the variable is known at the compile time. For example, if you write a C++ code, then you have to type in a variable something like this: int a equals 1. So that's how we specify the type of a variable in a language like C++, where this variable a has a type integer. But in Python, for example, we don't need to assign a statically typed value. For example, we can just assign a equals 1 and that will be enough. So we can also try this in the Python interpreter. So let's open our interpreter and assign variable a equals to 1, and if we type a and press enter, then you can see it's already assigned 1. Now I'll be coming back how you can open the Python interpreter and how you can run your first programs, but this is just to explain the difference between a statically typed and a dynamically typed language. So the next thing that we need to know is that what are the main advantages of having the statically typed language. So in a statically typed language, it's very easy to catch a lot of trivial bugs, and that can be caught during the time of writing the code. However, for a dynamically typed language, the type is associated with the runtime values. An example of dynamically typed languages are Perl, Ruby, Python, PHP, JavaScript, and so on. And for statically typed languages, you have C++, C, Java, Go, and Scala. The best part about Python is that not only is Python interpreter available for free, but there are a huge number of libraries which are available for various functionalities, from web development to machine learning to computer vision. We'll cover everything sequentially, but in this series I will mainly focus on Python and the basics. So let's start by installing our Python interpreter. So the normal way to do it, or to install the Python interpreter, is to go to www.python.org, and you can go to the downloads section and you can download the specific version that you need based on your platform. So in my case, I have a Windows computer, so I have to download the Windows version, but you can, if you have a Linux or a Mac OS, then you can download the specific version as well. Now, one thing to note is that while downloading, you should look at the version number. For example, there are various versions of Python, and the latest one is Python 3, which is the current running version. Now Python 2.7 is end of life, meaning that you can still use it if you have an old project, but it's advisable to use Python 3 for your development and if you are starting up a new project. And in Python 3, the one thing that you have to note is that Python 3.10 is currently in bug fix status. That means that there might be new bugs coming up or new bug fixes coming up to prevent these bugs. Therefore, it's always a good idea to use a version which is stable and which is secure. So the best option for us would be to use either Python 3.9 or Python 3.8. Now to download the specific version, you can just scroll down a little bit and then select the version that you need. For example, you can select Python 3.9.10 or Python 3.8.13 depending on what you need. Now once you download Python and you start to install it by double clicking on the launcher, then you might get a window and you might have this dialog box come up which will let you install Python for Windows, and there will be two checkboxes which you have to select. So the recommended thing for you to do is you have to select this add Python 3.7 to path, then it will be added to your Windows path and you won't have to add it manually to the Windows environment variables path in order to use the Python interpreter for your code. So once you are done installing, the next thing would be to install an IDE or integrated development environment. So I am using an IDE called Visual Studio Code. It is one of the most versatile IDEs out there right now. And so once you have started VS Code up like this, the next step would be to go into extensions. So click on extension and then just type Python here, and we can click on the first link that comes up. So this is the Python Intellisense or Pylance, and what this does is it helps us in auto-completing our code. It suggests a lot of Python function names when you are typing code, for example, using auto-completion, and also helps us catch initial errors. For example, if I type in a false function name which is not present, so as you can see, once I type PR, it shows me all the suggestions of the functions that are available. And if I, let's say, type print, I make a typo here and I just type in something, so it shows with this little yellow squiggly lines that PRNT is not defined. So that is an error which Pylint or Pylance already shows us, and it helps us to debug our code and make our software development process much smoother. So having said that, let's go back to our Python file now. So once you have installed Visual Studio Code and install the Pylance extension like I showed you, so the next step would be to type your first Python program. So the way to type the first Python program, that is what you're going to type, is called the hello world program. So hello world basically means that we'll have a print statement and then we'll type some text, and this print statement will print whatever we type inside this double quotation mark in the console. So just go ahead and type print, and then you can type in anything in the quotation. For example, I have typed here hello developer, and then we need to run this Python code using the Python interpreter. Now one thing to keep in mind is that when you open your Visual Studio IDE, you might not have this terminal which I already had open. So the way to get this terminal would be going up and clicking on this terminal and selecting new terminal. So then you will have a new terminal open. So once you have typed it and typed your code and saved it using Ctrl S or going to file and save, then what you can do is open your terminal, and as you will see that the terminal opens in the same folder that you are currently in, and type in Python and then the name of the program. Yes, so I have Python 3 installed separately, so I have to type in Python 3, and as you can see I get this program hello developer. So I'll just run it once more, and as you can see we get hello developer. So let me change the name, so let's say hello programmer, and if I run the same code, then now I get hello programmer. So that's it. Now you have written your first Python program. Now there's one more thing that I'd like to say in this first tutorial video, is that the concept of Docker file. So it's always a good idea to install Python on your native computer and use that to write your programs, write your code. But it might so happen, because you're writing the code for the first time, you might end up making some mistakes and your code might end up corrupting the environment variables or something, or even the Python installation might get corrupted. Then it becomes a big hassle to uninstall everything that you have installed and then reinstall Python and start from scratch. So a good way to have a Python environment running on your system is using a Docker file, because once you start writing code in a Docker file and something goes wrong, you can just rebuild the Docker file and get your exact environment back. So I'll teach you the concept of Docker file in a separate video, but for now what I'll do is I'll put this Docker file and the repository in my GitHub repository, in my GitHub profile, and you can just download the Docker file and the entire environment from here, and just install Docker Desktop from the Docker website, and then start your Visual Studio IDE code in the Docker environment. And here you will have a workspace similar to this, and you can just run your Python code from here. So the way to start this Docker is, I'll just show you how you can do it. So once you download the repository and open it, you will get something like this inside your Visual Studio Code. And here, because you have a folder called .dev container, which contains the Docker file as well as a dev container.json configuration file and a requirements.txt file. So to first start the environment in a container environment, you have to click this green button here, or you can press F1, and then you will usually get the option here of build and reopen in container, or rebuild and reopen in container. So once you click that, you'll see Visual Studio Code will start compiling, or the Docker will start compiling, and after a while it will open up in this environment, and here you will have a terminal with a root keyword and some numbers and alphanumeric code words. So what we are running in this Docker container is an image of an Ubuntu 20 system along with various Python libraries installed. For example, we have Python pip 3 installed, and if we open the requirements.txt, we have various packages, for example Jupyter, Matplotlib, NumPy, Pandas, SciPy, and so on. So we'll come back to each of these libraries in separate videos, but for now, if you are just starting your Python journey and you want to do it in a safe and sound manner without having to worry about corrupting your Python environment or your computer, and then just run it hassle-free, then feel free to use this Docker file and the Docker environment, and then just run your Python program here. So the way to run the Python program is, again, I'll show you once more. So just type in Python 3 and type the name of the program, and you'll have written and run your first Python program. So that'll be all for this video. I'll see you in the next one, where I'll explain further concepts of Python. Goodbye.